Okay, we're there we go.
Okay, I'm here.
All right, I'll just let everybody give a couple minutes and let everybody get logged on as usual there, and then we'll get started.
Let's see, we got Dean right off the bat.
Yeah, several. I even got the video going, so hopefully we'll have a good turnout tonight.
Oh, forgot to mute my volume.
Evening, guys. We'll just let everybody get logged on. We'll just give it a couple more minutes. But tonight we're gonna focus on kind of bait and lure making, take questions, and kind of talk about different things that we do. And then if we have time left, which I'm sure we will, then we maybe just kind of have a general discussion. I don't think we'll make the full 2 hours with just bait and lure, but we'll give everybody just a couple more minutes to get logged on, and then we'll go ahead and kind of get started tonight.
Oh, Scott's here too. Some of these people, I know them by name.
Yeah, I'm sure for the most part, at least around here, or trapping seasons for the most part finished up. You guys got quite a bit longer yet, I'm sure, for muskrat and such, but
yeah, we got another month yet for muskrat.
I'm sure most of I'm sure things are kind of wrapping up all over the states and country. See Barry's on too, so yeah, guys, we'll just give just a couple more minutes to log on and get logged on, so that way we're not repeating ourselves. Give it about another 2 minutes or so. But tonight we're going to mainly focus on the bait and lure making. So anybody out there that wants to throw their suggestions, in, or their experiences, or anything like that, you're more than welcome to, and we'll try to talk. If there's one thing, it's bait and lure is different, all over the states and the country and everything else. So what works for one might not work for the other, and vice versa. So. Yeah, I see it. Somebody's posted no closed season for coyotes. Well, I wish that was the case around here, or at least have an early season. You guys have any open seasons year round up there, Timberline, or
No.
you guys got set seasons for everything?
Set seasons for everything.
All right, so about 10 after. We'll go ahead and get started here tonight, guys. Everybody, once again, thanks for joining us here. Like I said, the title says it. Our main focus tonight is going to be on bait and lure making, preparation, just kind of all things, bait and lure wise. So, like I said, any questions or things you guys want to add about it, feel free to do that. And then if we can't cover the full 2 hours with bait and lure discussions, then we'll just throw in a little general discussion. There's several topics that's come up that we can talk about over the past few weeks. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Timberline, if you want to start off here, just if you maybe want to talking about a few different baits and little maybe homemade ones that you use that you've had success with over the years.
Yeah, well, I grind up fish in the hamburger machine. You know what I mean? Whatever the hell it's called there. And I do a lot of it. I do maybe 25 pounds of it. And I put it through the hamburger machine and I turn it into that small stuff. And I mix a little bit of glycerin in with it so it doesn't freeze solid. And I smear that on the trees around where I set my dog proofs and my bucket sets, and just for some extra smell. And I also take beaver and muskrat and I do the same thing with it and make a hamburger type bait with it. And as for the lures, we're in a cold climate here, and pretty well everything has got to have skunk into it to reach out. I mean, it's not so bad in the early season, but when it starts to freeze up and you get a couple of feet of snow on the ground, you got to have skunk in your lures to reach out.
Now with your meat-based bait, do you taint the meat at all, or do you use fresh, or do you try to make it rotten a little bit, or what is your process on going about that?
I make it and I freeze it fresh, and I take it out maybe, I don't know, 5 days before I need it. It's all in different dishes, and I leave it taint just on off, not too much, but just enough that it's got a little smell to it. And with fish, you get that there smell in a few days. Meat takes a little bit longer, but
yeah. And for those of you who's either maybe getting started in it or wanting to know more about the making, whenever we say fresh, rotten, or taint, there's a big difference between those three. Fresh is just what everybody thinks. If you just start off with fresh ground, say you're going to make a beaver based bait, you end up and you preserve that bait so where it's fresh. Whereas your rotten smell, you've actually let that bait sit outside and it has started to basically decompose. Now the other is to taint the bait. And tainting the bait is completely different than letting it rot. Basically, you're more or less aging the bait, but not letting it get to a point where it decomposes. So you'll get different smells and different textures and everything, out of these stages of using bait, and each has their own also. Of course, with your rotten bait, you're going to have a lot stronger, more pungent kind of smell. Your tainted bait is going to be a more subtle, almost a sweet, decomposing smell to it. And your fresh bait, it's just what it is. It's going to smell like fresh ground hamburger. So different ways to go about using bait, and they all work. So.
And I would just like
good evening,
to say on that, if it's too rotten, it's no good. I've done that many a times, and too rotten of a bait is no good. It scares the animals instead of calling them.
Hey, fellas, how you doing tonight?
How we doing?
Just wonderful. trying to figure this weather out. Yesterday we had a big snowstorm. Today it was 40.
Yeah, we're getting rain now, so.
Yeah, we are too.
Yeah, we haven't got that yet. So what are we talking tonight? Bait and lures?
Yep. Storch froze up. He's going.
Yeah, he said offline when I tried to come on.
Are we still on? I lost connection there.
We are. You're the one to keep taking a vacation. So talking tonight, bait and... Oh, hold on a minute. Sorry about the echo. Fixed it.
No problem. As long as we're still going.
Yeah, when I was coming on, your channel said
Yeah,
off
I
air.
think we're still going. So.
I'm going to take this here question here. Jim, I don't mix caster with my bait. No, I don't for mink trapping. I just use the beaver itself. The caster, I just use the caster in the lures, never in the bait. Unless it's like caster that I'm done with, you know what I mean? That's been used. And another thing too, if you're cutting up bait for trapping like we do here in big pieces, you can add a layer of salt between each layer of bait, and it'll help when you go to thaw it out. It'll come apart a lot easier. Good evening, Chris. But you get some beaver feet and some beaver tail that's been laying on the floor or in a bucket in the shed for a couple of days. That's the best mink bait you're ever going to find.
Yeah, I agree, Timber. Seems to stay fresh a long time too, other than like fish or something.
Well, it's got a distinctive smell to it. You know what I mean? And when you take a bait out in -20, it preserves itself. You know, it doesn't decompose anymore. And as for butcher scraps, yes.
Yeah, and do you guys also?
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, your darker meat critters, say like your muskrats or the beaver or that darker meated animal, that holds more blood. Even your fowl kind of birds. That to me, they make better baits in say deer or your light meated critters. I've always found that to be a little better also.
Yes, they age and they taint quicker. That is true.
Yeah. Anything with a lot of blood in it, a lot of a lot of your water critters will naturally have a lot more blood flow, than your land critters. And I've always found those to be better at, especially if you're going to taint them, but just in general as a bait.
Yeah, the darker meats seem to have a lot more stronger smell.
Mm-hmm.
Little experiment I did one time is it was actually kind of fun watching what was going on. Is I nailed a beaver tail to a tree about 3 foot up, and it was unbelievable how many tracks and stuff showed up around that beaver tail trying to get at it or just to have a sniff. And that thing lasted, I bet you, 2 years was hanging on that tree.
Well, Scott, you can put your bait in jars,
Yeah, and
cover it lightly, and keep an eye on it. You know, don't leave it go too far.
yeah, I mean, I should say, with bait, and lure both, just experimenting is your best benefit to anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be trapping season to experiment with this stuff. Like you said, Steve, make a bait and go set it out. Make a mock dirt hole set, and throw that bait in there, and then observe what happens and see what the critters react. If they shy off of it, that's not a good one. If they roll in the set, that primarily means it's too strong of a smell. If you see working, where they've tried to dig the bait up, that's your bait, that's your money bait right there. And I even go as far as I test them out on my dog. There's some baits that you hold up to his nose and he turns around and goes the other way, and there's some baits, in lures, and he starts just drooling at the mouth, and so just experimenting with different things is what I feel very important, with this do-it-yourself kind of bait and lure making.
Yeah, a good thing to do. I used to rake out a big circle, get down the bare dirt, and then put a small dirt hole in the center of it and drop the bait in there, and that way you can read the tracks of what critters come by.
Yeah, and game cameras are double good for that too. Keeping an eye on things, see what's going on. I know because I got 8 or 10 of them.
Usually, Christopher, I put my bait in plastic jars or old butter bowls or whatever with a good tight lid. I don't have too much good luck with me and glass. It's great for the bait. It just
Yeah, I agree.
ends up shattering in my back sack.
Yeah, I mean, mayonnaise jars or anything with a plastic screw top works good. I use a lot of. You can go to Walmart and you can buy little. I think they're about a pint size jar, and they're square. And the square ones, they're real nice because you can, that you can stack them, or carry them in a pack basket. You don't lose all that space with round jars, and they're real cheap. They're like 89 cents a piece. And if you just want to use them for one season and don't want to, wash them out, or the lids get cracked on, it's no big deal. But that's how I carry all my bait, is in those little square jars.
What are they? About a quart or what? Quart size? Half a quart?
Yeah, there's pint, quart, and then that's what I usually carry most of my canine baits and lures in. And then they've got one that's like a half gallon, and that's what I use for my dog proof. Just because I go through a lot more dog proof bait than anything else. And they're real nice. I mean, I've been using them for years, and I carry my bait in it's like a feed tote that you get at the hardware store, and it's got 2 rails down the side of it. And like I said, those square jars, they just stack just perfect in there, and they don't walk around. And you can just label the top of each jar with a Sharpie, and it's real nice and works real good.
Liver is good for weasels, Timothy.
Yeah, I think liver in general is very good.
Yeah, when it doesn't make it on my plate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grinded a bunch of that at one time too.
But getting back, as far as tainting the bait, it was asked a couple times, and I wanted to touch on that, and you guys might have different ways of doing it, but like I said, tainting a bait isn't letting it rot. You know, it's not decomposed to a state where it's rotted, but it still has you know, it's got this funky kind of sweet smell to it, and I've always found you know, better success with tainted baits over fresh or rotted baits. And the way I do it is I actually put the bait in a tote, some sort of sealed container, and I put it in the refrigerator, and I may leave it in the refrigerator for a couple months, and you can slowly watch the bait. It'll start to change its texture and everything else, and because you're doing it at a colder temperature in a refrigerator rather than, you know, in 60 or 70 degrees, the process is slowed way down and you can control it a lot better. And then you know, whenever it is to where your desired texture, smell, however you want to use it, whenever you get to that desired point, off the decomposition of it either with salt or sodium benzoate. And I use just salt. Sodium benzoate, you know, it's a little bit more expensive, and I've never felt the need for it. But you can salt it right then, and that stops that decomposition process, and you've basically you've got that bait, and then you can freeze it, and whenever you thaw it back out, it's in that same state as it was, and you know, you're good to go to mix it with other things or use it as such.
Something I like to add to that refrigerator trick, make sure you label it so somebody doesn't make your stew with it. It gets a little rough. I've had pretty good luck of stopping the taint with a little bit of borax mixed in with it. When I get it to where I want it, I'll put like in a quart jar, put like a tablespoon of borax in with it, and it seemed to stop it pretty good.
Yeah, you just don't want to leave it go too far.
Oh, that's definite. I buried a jar in my yard once and forgot about it, and I found it when I was digging worms about a year later. That was some good stuff.
I remember years ago on the big martin line, I had run out of bait, and I had nothing for bait, and I come across a pail of pickled herring. They were over pickled, they were burnt, they were so bad, and you wouldn't believe the critters I caught on the herring.
Was that in the fridge, or did you find it out in the garage, Timber?
No, it was given to me. But I mean, they were pickled so bad that they couldn't be eat, you know?
Yeah. Hard as a rock.
Strong, salty taste.
My mom used to eat that. Ugh.
Brian's on.
Times with your, like what you said, Timber, you know, if you let that bait go too long where it actually does rot and it has that real deep rotten smell to it, I think that's where a lot of guys you know, that they'll make a set, and they'll, at least down here, you know, because it really is dependent on temperature a lot, as far as how strong of a bait that you're using. But if you get an animal and he's rolling in your set, you know, you come up to a set and say your trap's been snapped off, and you observe that trap and you find real long guard hairs in the trap, a lot of times what's happened is that bait stinks so bad that that animal, rather than work in that set, he rolls in it. And whenever
Yeah,
he rolls in it, he trips the trap, and you find those long guard hairs in your trap rather than, you know, what there should be, which is a critter sitting in there.
yeah, it's
So
gone too far.
you
He doesn't want to
you
eat it.
gotta kind of play the smell. Go ahead.
I said then that stage there has gone too far, and he doesn't want to eat it. He just wants to roll into it. Then you know the next batch not to leave it go
Yeah.
that far. It's like anything else, you got to learn, you know.
Yeah, and you know the biggest thing with this bait and lure making, it's all trial and error. You know, because like I said, that like you guys up north, you know, you say everything you use, you know, has skunk in it, and for me, uh, you know, I deal with temperatures anywhere from -10 to 65, 70 degrees sometimes during my trapping season. You can't use the same bait all through season. Uh, you know, earlier in the season, whenever the temperature is warmer, you got to kind of step it back and go to that milder bait. But you know, whenever it starts to get colder, that's where you start breaking out the stinkier baits. You know, so it is different. You know, all over the place.
Yeah.
Seen a question on there, Stu, about how much salt per gallon do you use in your bait?
Um, it just depends. A lot of times, I prefer a, you know, kind of a drier bait. Whenever you start to taint stuff, you'll end up with a lot of you know, juices that come off of it. And I like that to a degree, but at the same time, I want a bait that I can work with. You know, a semi-firm bait that I can scoop out, and I don't have to deal with a, you know, a bunch of bloody juice on top. And the salt, you know, will of course absorb that juice a lot more than if you drain it off. But I'd say, as a rule of thumb, uh, I tend to use about a half a pound of salt per gallon of bait. And usually what I'll do is I'll make my bait, and I'll make it in one big batch, and then I'll package it in gallon bags, and then I'll freeze it like that. And then as the season progresses, I can just keep pulling out gallon bag at a time, you know, and a gallon of bait, you know, will last me, you know, a week and a half normally. So I just keep pulling out gallons throughout the season, and it's just easier to work with, you know, than one big pile.
Now, do you use any kind of salt or a specific brand or a specific type?
I tend to use the water softener salt for no reason other than it's cheaper than anything else you can buy in bulk. Uh, it's the same salt I use whenever I tan. I just started tanning a big batch of coons the other day, and I bought some, and you can get 40 pounds of water softener salt, and it's not real fine, but it's pretty coarse salt, and you can get it for $4.27 for 40 pounds. So I just bought some the other day. That's why I know the price, and like I said, that's really reasonable, and you can use it for many different things.
Yeah, I've never heard of salt being that cheap. Bitch, gee. When I want to catch a bunch of raccoons, I go down to the dollar store and I buy a bunch of canned fish and some cat food in the cans and some dry cat food, and I mix it all together till I got a couple gallons, and that's what I use to catch my raccoons.
I have pretty good luck here in the warmer weather with sweet baits. I'll take dried corn and soak it with molasses, let it ferment a little bit, and I have pretty good luck with that.
Yeah, I agree. Unless I'm making, you know, water type sets, uh, you know, pocket sets in a creek or stuff, I tend to stay away from using straight up fish. I find just around my area I end up with a lot more possums for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I tend to stay away from that whenever I'm on dry land, and I'll like Steve said, I'll tend to go towards a more of a sweet bait. Coons will hit a sweet bait just as hard, if not harder, than a meat-based or a fish-based bait. So uh, everything has their place. I'll use fish on the water line, of course, just because of the simple fact, you know, you've got coons, mink, and you know even otters, you know, that are able to work it rather than the sweet bait.
You're welcome. You see here, I can put fish in a dirt hole too. It doesn't, if I got nothing else, it makes no difference.
Yeah, that's good. Two
Yeah,
birds
we'll
with
send
one
you up some
stone.
possums your way.
Don't you dare.
You'll find all about our famous possums up there whenever you start messing with fish.
Yeah. But you know, you go down to the dollar store with $10.
Yeah, the question.
You can make a lot of raccoon bait for $10.
Yeah, big time.
You got to sell 10 raccoons pay for it, but
Yeah. Yeah, there was a question here asking about buffalo oil, and guys asked it several times. I have no experience with buffalo oil. I don't live in an area where I can get buffalo oil, so I would imagine, you know, that it would be similar to rendering down any kind of fat, though. But as far as, you know, using buffalo oil strictly, no, I don't have any experience with it.
I've never heard of it.
Guys asked a couple of times, said he's got a blender. What baits can he use? Well, you know, you go for any of them. Just because you have a blender, or if you don't have a blender, uh, doesn't mean that you can make or not make bait. You can use a grinder. You can chop it up. For the most part, all of my meat-based baits are ground up just to get a consistency to them. I prefer a grinder rather than a blender, strictly because the amount that I'm doing, and you know, a blender, Unless you're doing small stuff, it plugs up. So you got to be doing such things as like castor and stuff. Putting meat in a blender, I can tell you from experience, does not work.
I see NH Trapper says that buffalo oil comes from carp.
Yeah, well, okay, then I must have misunderstood him. Then if he's talking about buffalo as the buffalo fish, then yes, I have all kinds of experience with dealing with fish oil coming from, the buffalo fish. So I'll touch on that. Yeah, the buffalo fish is a very fatty fish. It is the primary fish that I use to make all my fish oil. I've done a couple videos on them actually. It's been several years ago whenever I did it, but the process of making fish oil is really straightforward. You take fish, uh, chunk it up to some degree if you want to. If not, you can even leave it whole. Put it in some sort of a container. Uh, the container is where people fail. In making fish oil, you have to um, get the container sealed up enough where flies and such cannot get in there and lay eggs and will start decomposing the fish. But you still have to be able to have enough gap in that seal to let air out, because as those fish are decomposing, they have to breathe. If not, whatever container you have on it will just blow its seal or lid, and you'll end up with your fish decomposing and rotting. The whole point of making fish oil is to not let them rot. Uh, After a time, and that time being a few months in high degree temperature, you can then take and you can drain off, drain out, and separate what will be fish juice, which is the rottenness juice of the fish, and then you'll have a layer of oil. And true fish oil is what you want to use. You can also use the juice, but yeah, as far as fish oil, it's gotta everything will come to fish oil.
Yeah, you can pretty well make all your own baits for every animal, or get them in the wild and save yourself some money on buying commercial ones.
Yeah, and as the question was, what type of fish gives off the best oil? And it's all depending on what kind of fish you have in your area. But the fattier the fish, the better. Like you're not going to get much oil, if any, out of a crappie. The fish has no fat, or a walleye per se. That's why the rough fish, like in my area, I use carp and buffalo. Those are your fattier fish. Those fish will yield more per pound of raw fish than any other kind of fish. I don't know what type of fish do you guys use for your fish oil makings?
I use usually herring and mackerel.
I'm a carp guy.
And they're not a fatty fish either. But it's what we have plenty of, so.
Yeah, and the question was asked also, which is better, homemade versus commercial oil? Um, I would say simply homemade oils just because of the cost. But I think where a lot of people fail and yeah, at making their fish oil is they don't separate the oil from the juice properly. You will end up with a layer of oil, and then you will end up with a layer of just basically rotten fish juice whenever you render this stuff down. And you need to be able to separate that. If not, you'll end up with a very, very strong smelling liquid. And how commercially available fish oil is, it is not pressed. Uh, so the process is a little different, but the end result is the same. So as long as you do it right, uh, I I don't really see a difference other than the price. You can make a lot of fish oil very cheap, as opposed to you know, buying it commercially.
Yes, Parker, sardines are good too. Nothing wrong with sardines.
If I can keep them off my plate once again. Now, Timber, you might know a little better than me. Would salmon scraps be fatty enough for making fish oil?
Yes, they would.
The skin and stomach and...
Salmon's an oily fish, and a very oily fish, just like codfish, very oily.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just what you can get your hands on, you know, more so than. I mean, I primarily use the buffalo and the carp simply because I do a lot of bow fishing, and you know, one good night I can fill up a 55-gallon drum plumb full of fish, and you know that'll you know be a lot easier than going out there with rod and reel. So I mean, a lot of it is just, you know, what you can get your hands on, because it does. If you're wanting to try to make fish oil in any decent amount, it takes a quite a bit of fish, or you know, raw material to start out with.
Yeah, but some of them states got them their fish that fly through the air. Are they any good for fish oil?
Yep.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
not bad either. We have all of them.
that took me off guard for a minute there, Timber. I was thinking of the ones in the ocean.
Well, there's some kind of carp, eh? Or garp?
Yeah, they're a carp.
Okay.
I've seen two
Yeah,
people.
we have them both. We have
I've seen two people ask Stuart, "How do you separate the oil from the liquid?"
how I mainly do it is a lot of times your oil will float if you're doing it in big containers, you know, 55-gallon drums, or even 5-gallon drums. You'll end up with the, you know, oil and actually float. But the easiest and best way I found to make sure you basically get it all is put it in a clear glass container, or a clear jar. You can actually see the separation. And then I've got, it's basically a modified grease gun, and it just acts as a big syringe is all it is. It just acts as a suction, and you can take and, you know, just suck the oil out away from the juice. You can actually see it. The oil will be on top of the juice. So if you have any kind of clear container, it's no problem.
But just leave that last ounce or so there so you don't mix it up with the oil and the liquid together.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's where most people, they fail. You know, they say they end up, they try to make fish oil and they don't separate out that oil from that juice, and I think that's where, you know, they end up with a real strong, rotten smelling product that ends up not working like fish oil should, and it's all in that last step, that separation process. And you know, it's quite the undertaking to do it, really. I mean, I go as far as I hang out and I separate it, and I end up with just a mixture of juice and oil, and just in all one liquid. I separate all the solids from it, and then I go back and then I separate the liquids. So I mean, it's a pretty in-depth, ongoing process. I mean, to really do.
Now, I was told by some trappers that most of the fish oil that you purchase commercially is actually artificial fish oil. And I was also told it works good as an attractant, but if a raccoon gets a taste of it, I understand it's real bitter and they'll actually shy away from it.
It's something I don't know, Steve. I've never bought commercial fish oil.
Oh, I have no doubt that commercial fish oil is cut. I mean, it has to be. There would be no money in it if they gave you pure fish oil. I'm sure it's cut with other things, you know, and more than likely, you know, like you say, you know, those other things are probably what makes it bitter. But I mean, true 100% fish oil, I mean, you can cook with it, essentially. I mean, there's a lot of this world that cooks with it, uses it in their everyday, you know, eating and food products. So that is another thing, you know, that you could add to, you know, commercial versus homemade. With your homemade fish oil, unless you're cutting it yourself with something, you're getting pure 100% fish oil.
Yeah, that was one of the things. I was using commercial fish oil on my dog-proof traps, and I was using cat food down in the bottom, and I was dumping fish oil down the hole, and those traps sat there all season without even getting touched. I could see tracks around them, but it was like once they got a taste of it, they wouldn't go back in to get the rest of the bait.
It's funny, you know, usually a raccoon will eat anything.
Yeah. So if I was told right, it must be some pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah, I can imagine.
All right, who's gonna taste it?
Well, I've tasted it. I won't lie. I mean, I've tasted it, and basically, I put up these videos on how to make fish oil, or how I make fish oil, and I labeled them just that. I said the process of making fish oil, and I didn't put the process of making fish oil for trapping. And these videos have been up for like, I think, 3 years now. And I started getting a lot of people, and I was having to translate their comments, and it was a lot of people from other countries. They were Chinese and Korean, you know, and other ethnic groups, and they were watching these videos to see how to make fish oil for, you know, human consumption purposes. That's what they were watching them for. And so I got to researching it a little bit, you know, and looking into it, and that's what it was. They were just like, you know, we would use you know, canola oil or vegetable oil for our cooking. That's what these people were watching my videos. They were going to make fish oil for cooking. And so I strained out a bunch of the good clear stuff, and you know, what I thought was the cream of the crop, basically, and I tried it. And you know, true 100% pure fish oil isn't bad. I mean, it's not real good, but it's not bad by any means.
Well, good. Since you're the guinea pig and you tasted real fish oil, why don't you give some commercial stuff a try and let us know?
Yeah, see, I'm not gonna do that. I have one of them
Come
things where I
on.
knew exactly where this came from, and
Come on.
they send me that other bottle. I'm not.
I'll tell you
No.
what. $5, you do it live on video, right here.
Yeah.
Because
I've
I
been trying to
noticed.
give somebody. I'm up to a point now. Go ahead.
I notice it smells pretty fishy, but it doesn't smell real, like a real fishy, which is kind of bizarre. But it's
No, it doesn't.
it is, but it isn't.
True 100% fish oil doesn't smell a whole lot like fish. It has that, that kind of a musky, distinct smell to it, but it's not a rotten smell like what everybody thinks. And as far as getting somebody to do something on live, Steve, I've been trying for years. I'm up to $20 and a case of beer. I want to get somebody and I want to hit them as hard as I can in their face with a beaver tail off of about a 50-pounder. That's the one thing that I want to do live. Slap them. That's what I want to see live.
That's
But I
loud
can't get
enough
nobody
on the
to
water.
do it. So
I want to hear what it sounds like. Do you get to put a handle on it, or do you just have to hold the beaver tail?
well, I'm thinking you just hold it, just by one end and just give them a good slap across it. I'd just like to see it.
You and about 1 million subscribers.
$50, that's 65
It'd be
Canadian.
cool.
Uh-oh, Timber's considering it.
I can't find anybody around here, but I would like to see it.
We're getting to that, Ryan. Just hold on a few minutes.
Yeah, we were getting off topic. Sorry, guys. I got us off topic, but
Jim said that's going to leave a mark.
anyway, back to yeah. See, that's what I'm counting on. You get that nice scaly mark. But anyway, back to lure and bait making. Let's see here. Pencil Tucky Trapper, I think he asked this. Yes, I go ahead and I usually remove the guts from the fish as much as I can. I think you end up with just more of a kind of pure oil. I've done some both ways and it still comes out as oil, but
You get a stronger and a purer oil if you take the guts out.
yeah, that is my experience.
I agree.
For some reason, that it's got to be something in the organs, but your oil will it'll be a darker oil whenever you make the oil and you leave the guts in. It'll look almost like muddy water. It'll be a tea color. Whereas if you take the guts out and use just pure flesh, you'll have a really kind of a clear colored oil. And it's got to be one of the organs. I'm saying.
Yeah, there's probably bacteria in there and stuff too with their digestive tract, I would think.
All right, Stuart. Brian wants to know if you make any lures or baits with glands. I don't, but maybe you do.
Yeah, let's talk about glands. Yes, I make a lot of lure with glands. I'll start off by saying, first off, I think lure in general is way overrated. I honestly feel location and bait is more important than lure. That being said, lure does definitely have its place. As far as coon lures, I don't use any. If you could consider fish oil as a lure, then yes, I use a little fish oil on my coon sets. The lures that I use is primarily for canine trapping, and it's gland lure. I use them later in the season whenever we have cold weather, everything's froze up, and later in the season you're getting more into the mating times of the canines. So a gland lure definitely does have its place. You can look at a coyote. You can look at diagrams online and you can find out where the glands are. For the most part, especially on a female, if you take the bladder, 3 or 4 inches of the large intestine, and the feet, those are your primary glands in a canine that will produce a lure for you. There are glands in the feet of a coyote right at the D-pad that you can take out, and then of course the bladder. You can extract the urine from the bladder, and then you can grind up the bladder, and then like I said, that they're going through the last few inches of the small intestine. There's a gland right by the vent, and then there is what you mean by using that intestine. Grind it up, add some glycerin to it or something to not help or not aid it in freezing. And I use some that's tainted, for a couple of weeks, and I use some that's fresh. I've have success with both. I wouldn't say one's better than the other, but that's pretty much how I go with my gland lure, especially for canines.
See you, Chris.
Yeah, the only glands I've tried to use from the critters is mink glands. I always try to save, but I notice when I grind them up and mix them with oil or whatever I'm using them with, I notice the smell doesn't stay with them real long. Am I doing anything wrong? Should I put glycerin in there?
It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre.
I always use glycerin. I always use glycerin, and while we're on the lures and gland lures, we need to throw in there, beaver castor and scent glands off of muskrats, and then like what you said, Steve, the scent glands out of mink. Those are also glands, and we've talked several times on how to make castor. You can pull the castor glands out, you can use them fresh or dry them, grind them up, put a little glycerin with them, and you're good to go. Same thing with the oil sac glands off of beaver and off the muskrats. Those lures right there are universal. They will catch anything from water to land animals and everything in between.
I got an old hand meat grinder that I use for all my stuff. Just for baits, not for personal use. All you need is peanut butter for squirrels. That's all you need.
Yeah, I've got a big. It's a big grinder. It's on a 3/4 horse electric motor with a capacitor on it. It's this big belt driven. It's an old meat grinder, but the throat on it's like 3 or 4 inches around, and that's I use for grinding all my bait. And as far as the caster, I use just this little grinder I bought at Walmart for like $15. It's a it looks like a mini blender. It's just a high-speed little mini blender, and that's what I use for grinding up all my caster and glands. You know, the grinders mainly make for the meat, the big stuff.
Yeah, I still gotta grind mine by hand. I never thought about putting a motor on it. But I got pails and pails of fish and liver in the freezer waiting to go.
Stuart, how many horsepower motor did you say was on that grinder?
3/4 horse.
Is there anything you do half-ass? I don't think. I think you are an achiever.
Good night, Scott.
Well, I like to be efficient.
I guess.
I think would be the better. I don't enjoy doing something that I don't enjoy for long periods of time. So, you know, sitting there grinding fish for hours and hours, or grinding, you know, meat for hours and hours, that's something I don't enjoy. So I try to make things as efficient as possible as I can, you know, to speed things along.
Well, I take a day and I make all I can, so I only gotta wash it the once. Hard to wash them old grinders.
Helpful hint on the hand grinders: if you run a couple of pieces of bread crust through it, it gets most of the gunk out, and then you can just wash the rest.
Yeah, NH Trapper. It's not the magic bullet, but it's like one of them. It's, you know, yay tall, foot tall or so, and it's got the little screw-on containers. It's similar to what you're talking about. I've had it for several years, and it's ground a many a pounds of caster.
Yeah, caster's hard to grind. I cut mine in little pieces to help it.
So do I.
Yeah, if you mix your glycerin in before you start grinding, you kind of make a slurry, and I think it helps.
Mind you, and the price of glycerin went up a lot too. I bought a bottle today. My God Almighty! I wish the
Really?
price of her. Yeah, I wish the price of her would go up.
Yeah, glycerin's not cheap, not by any means, but you know, it's something that it doesn't freeze, and I think it's one of they have not found anything, you know, better than glycerin to use. So until I do, I'll stick with the price of it. But you're right, it's stupid expensive.
I have.
Here's a pretty good question about it. The question is, do you let your bait sit for a while, and in what climate do you store them at? You know, we kind of covered that as far as letting your bait sit for a while. It's, you know, at what state do you want them? Do you want them fresh tainted, or you know, almost rotten. Uh, but as far as storing them, my bait, uh, my bait gets frozen after it is tainted to my liking. I halt the process of decomposition with salt, and then I put them in gallon bags and I freeze them, and that'll last me, uh, you know, from year to year. So I freeze everything. I think it's just the best way.
Yeah, I got one big freezer just for that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a little off
Let's
topic,
see.
but
As
I'll
far as the
answer it.
caster,
Just a second. I have
yeah, go
caught
ahead.
I have
Go ahead.
caught I have caught raccoons in 120 traps, but I don't recommend it. I know it's off topic, but we'll answer it. Get it going.
But as far as the caster goes, you know, it's to however your liking is. I personally, you know, the question was asked, do you end up with a paste or whatever? How do you end up with the consistency of your caster? I like a consistency that I would say is close to like toothpaste. It's a uh, real thick paste basically. You can smear the stuff basically once you grind the caster. I mean, there's guys you can puree that stuff and make it almost liquid, or you can have it dry and crumbly. But you know, my preferred consistency is, like I said, almost a thick paste.
Yeah, you want it pasty enough that when you apply it, it's not going to rain and wash it off. You know, it's going to stick there in the glove and hold. Make it thick in that consistency, and you'll be all right.
Yeah, and as far as you know, storing lures, um, depending on the types of preservatives that you use in a lure, those can stay out. Um, you know, it's out in your shop basically at room temperature. You know, I wouldn't recommend them being in, you know, 100-degree weather by any means, but it lures are a little different than bait as far as how you can store them. Me personally, I go ahead and I live in an area, you know, that gets very hot. You know, during the summer, you know, we'll have a couple week stretch of 100+ degree weather usually every year, and you know, it's be 90 degrees for the majority of July and August. So I go ahead and just I go ahead and freeze everything just to give myself a little insurance, because I do all my bait and lure making about this time of the year, and so I don't have to do it before season comes in. So depending on your preservatives, yes, you can leave your lure out, but if you have any doubt, just go ahead and freeze it, and you'll not have anything lost by doing that.
Now, the trap and supply store that I go to, and I've only been to one of them in my life, he keeps all these lures and baits in a fridge. They're in there all the time until he sells them.
That's probably not a bad idea.
I don't know if all the suppliers do that, but he does.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for the most part, depending on your preservatives, you know, any of your commercial lures, uh, they've got so much preservative in them that you can leave them out, you know, like I said. But I mean, depending on what you're, you know, personally with your homemade stuff, I think, like you said, you're not hurting yourself at all by putting them in a refrigerator or freezing them or keeping them out. So, I mean, like I said, I do it more just for insurance than anything because I don't want to have a whole batch, you know, go bad for some unforeseen circumstances.
And like I said before, the only commercial lures I buy is the stuff that's on sale that other people won't buy. And then I buy them, I take them home, and I smell them and see what I can do to fix them.
Yeah.
I bought some Red Fox Gland lure one time. I'll not say who made it. But it was a bottle of rotten. It would just about turn your stomach. However, they could sell such a thing, but
Yeah, you can tell the difference instantly when you open up a bottle. You know, usually if it smells like a butthole, it's pretty good stuff. But if it smells rotten, I haven't had luck with the rot.
no, rotten's good for nothing. Animals want to roll in rotten.
Yeah.
As far as collecting urine off your catches, do either of you guys do that?
Nope, never done it.
I do, especially with red fox. Red fox is kind of universal with red fox, gray fox, coyote. It'll draw a coon in. So, yeah, I got
Yeah, I agree.
a veterinary syringe. So if they got a full bladder, I'll keep it.
Yeah, I agree, and you know, I do the same thing. It's not hard at all. I've got it set right there on my skinning table. I've got my jar of skunk essence sitting right there, and I've got my jars of urine. And you know, like I said, I collect about 3 or 4 inches of the large intestine. You know, right by the vent anyway. So it's real simple. After you skin the animal, all you got to do is just make an incision right, you know, right down the center of them, and you'll see that bladder. And a lot of times it's empty, you know, but sometimes it's not, and you can either take a syringe and suck that urine out, or you can simply just pinch off that bladder and cut it high, and then, you know, drain that urine into a jar, and then, like I said, I keep the bladders, and that goes in. So I mean, it's not hard at all to do. On coon lures, and you know, I've already touched on this, but it's been asked several times, so I figured we'd touch on types of coon lures. You guys know my opinions on it. You know, I'm not a big believer in coon lures. I think bait and location is bigger than anything. But if I was to use a coon lure, and by lure I'm talking about anything that they can't eat. You know, when people say they're using syrup as a lure, that's not lure. That's bait. But uh, gray or red fox urine is a fairly decent attractant for coons. Everybody in the woods hates the gray fox, so you know, if you're making a dirt hole set and you're primarily targeting coon, a little squirt of you know, red fox urine on the back is definitely not going to hurt you. I don't know, Steve, Timberline, you guys use any dedicated raccoon lures?
Nope, never, never, never. I just use my fishy bait and smear a little bit of it on the tree, and that's all I do.
And I usually go for the sweet, just because I'm in a neighborhood and I want to keep the cats away from it. Not in a neighborhood, but near neighborhoods. So I guess sweet is kind of dedicated, other than gray fox.
I never
I
found
don't
you
know. I've
need.
caught a lot of red fox over the years on sweet baits.
Oh, good.
I find there's no need for coon lure.
No.
Hey, Mike.
I agree. Let's see. I'm trying to get caught up on the questions. I don't know if we've missed any, guys. Go ahead and put them back in. I know we kind of got a little off topic there a second, but
I've been watching pretty steady. You're pretty
I don't
much
know.
caught up, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
they got their own thing going there.
Yeah, I'm trying. I mean, I try to keep everybody watching involved as much as we can. So trying to get caught up on it. Here's a good question, but the question is, do you pre-bait canine sets? I'm sure we've all got different answers. Steve, you want to start off? Do you do any pre-baiting?
You know, I tried that one season, and it seemed like I would pop me in a dirt hole and then pre-bait it. The fox or coyote would come visit, steal the bait, poop in front of it. I'm sure he peed on it too, and then never come back again during season. Now, putting a beaver carcass out in the woods, wired to a tree or something like that, is a different story, because they have to keep coming back. But I didn't have good luck with it in my area.
Yeah, I've never like pre-baited a dirt hole set or a flat set or any set like that, but I do make bait sites for the animals pre-season.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of that's what your law is, because here, where I'm at, we can't pre-bait, or can't bait, I should say, no exposed bait. So as far as pre-baiting dirt holes, with the amount of rain that we get and the simple fact that I move through an area so much, it is just not practical or efficient for me to do that. Check your laws definitely, because I mean, even as far as going, and if you wanted to pre-bait coons to get them to come to an area, technically in my state that's illegal. We can't bait anything, so that would be out of the question. I really have no experience with that. But like I said, as far as making a set and baiting it's just not economical or to do. Not only that, unless you're doing it for a long period of time and actually conditioning the animals to come to you, then you're not really gaining anything. If you go pre-bait in an area 3 or 4 days, he pulls the bait and he might not ever come back to that again. in order for a like you said, a bait station to work, you actually have to condition the animals. They know that there's bait there. They're coming every day for, for weeks and weeks on end. The best bet, in my opinion, is, set on sign with good bait to start with, and that's where you're gonna, be more efficient with your trapping.
But anywhere where you can pre-bait, like especially for raccoons, you can rack some numbers up in a hurry.
Yeah, but I think you'll agree with me here on this, Timber. I mean, in order to do that, like I said, you have to actually condition those animals. If you're going to go to all the trouble of baiting and, a site, you need to put some time into it, I should say. I mean, you got to be dedicated to it. You just can't, little bit here, a little bit there over a couple months. You actually need to go forward and condition the animals to come in, and then, like how you do, go in and get them all at once.
But it doesn't take long, Stuart, a few days. And like I got 8 to 10 deer cameras up, you know what I mean? And every night them raccoons are in the apples. Every night, every night, every night. There could be 6 or there could be 10. And that way there's no extra work, Then when you go in the morning and you got 30 or 35 raccoons and, you're trying to get a deer. But if you did that in places where you weren't trying to get a deer or get pictures of one, your numbers would grow considerably, And I mean, for me, apples don't cost anything because there's apple trees everywhere. So it's a good thing.
Oh, I have no doubt. If I could pre-bait, I'd in a heartbeat. In a sense where you're conditioning animals and then can go in and actually get them. But our law here states we cannot place or set a foothold trap within 30 feet of bait. And like I said, for the way I trap, run and gun, where I don't stay in an area very long, it's not economical, to do it. And, if we could snare, that'd be a different story. But it's really hard to get them with footholds even coming to a bait. They're onto that bait. They know it's there. It's hard to get them shut down, before. Let's see here.
You're coming fast.
Yeah, and here's a question, and this is mainly directed towards, the new guys out there. His question was, this is my first year trapping. Does it pay to use lures? Will I catch more? And this being said, us three here, I'm in the more of the central Midwest. Steve's, he's up in upper part of the Midwest, and Timber, he's all the way up in Canada. So, everybody's got different techniques, that work for, for them in their own areas. As far as lures, will you catch more? you know, that's just one small piece in the big puzzle. You know, what we say works good might not work in another area. So, like we said with trying out baits earlier this evening, you know, the best thing to do is just go out and experiment on your own. Uh, you know, it doesn't take anything, and you can do it summer long. You know, take a bait, take a lure, uh, take a couple of them, and go out and make, you know, mock dirt hole sets or mock flat sets. Don't put a trap there, but just make the set. You know, with different lures, and you can do this, you know, within this. Make 3 or 4 sets within 20 feet of you, and bait and lure them up, and then stand back and and then observe it over the next couple of weeks and see which set has been worked the most or how it's being worked. And I mean, you can learn a lot. I mean, trapping is a lot of observation, and whenever you can sit back and observe, you're only going to be better for doing it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think you just about hit the nail on the head.
And if I could say something too, that depends on the species you're trapping and how you're trapping it too. You know what I mean? Like if I was setting dirt holes, I wouldn't set dirt holes without lure. They gotta have it. But if I'm setting a big bait site for coyotes, you don't need lure because you just hang your snares and you're going to get them because they're going to come back. Now, if I was trapping marten and fisher and I didn't have a good strong skunk lure, I wouldn't bother. I wouldn't do it because it'd be a waste of gas to go check the traps.
Absolutely. Certain sets, you don't want any lure around, like a blind set, snare set, like Timber was saying, around a bait pile or whatever, because you don't want them to take notice of anything in the area. You want them just to go on their normal, natural way to get into your set. But as far as bait holes and you know, flat sets and stuff, yes, of course, anything that will bring the animal that extra couple of feet to get him into your set for a possible catch, by all means.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And and there's one thing, and I think it's especially for a new guy. I mean, it took me uh, a couple years, you know, to figure this out, and it was by observation. But it's something that we haven't touched on this year, or this tonight, I should say. But how the question, if I was to put it in a question, is how often do I refresh or rebait or relure a set? And you know, this is different everywhere also, but I think a lot of people get tied up with, they feel every couple of days or, you know, after a little sprinkle or something, they need to go back and they need to put a bunch of bait and a bunch of lure back in that set, and that is definitely not the case. Um, you know, there is such a thing as overbaiting and overluring. It is a real thing, and it will shy animals, you know, away from a set. Uh, just simply like we was talking just a couple minutes ago about making mock sets. For those of you out there that's done trapping, go out and look at the sets that you pulled 2 or 3 weeks ago. If you had a dirt hole set or a trench set or a flat set, now that it's been a couple of weeks, if you're done trapping, go out and look at that set, and I will almost guarantee you that that set has been worked, and it has been worked hard within the last couple of days. And that most people don't realize, you know, how good of a sense of smell these animals have, and just how long that a set will actually last. I think I should add to that. I mean, I'll go around to you guys too, but for the most part, unless I get some horrendous downpour of, 2 inches or better, uh, especially on canines, and I mean, I know this is kind of where I'm focusing this towards, because I see this being a problem more so in canine trapping than anything. But whenever I make a set, I let it set for 2 weeks. And I will put urine and I will lure it. And unless that set's dug out, or like I said, you have some horrendous weather change, I won't rebait or relure it for the duration of that set. There is no need to. You start doing too much to it, and then you start having animals shy away from it. It'll be too stinky, too smelly, and you'll end up actually hurting yourself.
I agree. The longer you can stay away from close proximity to your sets, the better, I find. I've had sets sit there for 2 weeks under mild rain, probably 6 inches of snow, and caught a coyote. The farther away you can stay from your set, the better. There comes a point in time in certain critters, like the cats, I understand their noses aren't as sensitive as a canine, so I would see where a relure a little more often would be good at a cat set. I'm not sure. You trap some bobcat?
Yeah, I've caught bobcats. We don't have a season for them, but I catch several every year.
I do the same.
And I always catch them in either fox or coyotes. I mean, canine sets. You might as well just say canine sets, just as a general.
Right.
But and I treat them the same way. And like you said, you might let that thing set for 8-10 days, and nothing's happened. And if the critters are on a cycle where they don't come around but every 10 days, it's not that you're missing critters, it's just that they haven't came around, and you end up with a catch. This year, where I made a set, and 3 days later I caught the coyote, and it had snowed. Or that, I mean, those critters have such a strong sense of smell that there is no need to overbait and overlure a set.
Definitely. I've had coyotes, especially. I've had them actually shy away from sets. They'll come with, 5 or 6 feet. You can tell they stood there for a minute, and I think they actually shy away from the strong lure smell. And I notice as that lure fades, it seems the coyotes get more inquisitive, and will actually then start working the set.
But I'll add to that too. If you want to learn, there's some videos on YouTube where people got trail cameras with hours of footage on coyotes and foxes working sets and not getting caught. Just staying a couple feet away from it. And it's nice to watch. You learn a lot from doing it.
Yeah, I've heard some guys putting a trail camera on your sets can be very frustrating. Seeing how many animals come by that you had no clue, and actually, take a sniff and go on about their way.
Oh, I agree. If you have access to trail cams, they're your best friend. That's actually the primary reason why I quit checking before work, is because with cams I was realizing I was missing a lot of critters that were showing up at the times I would be there checking sets, and so I ended up setting new in the morning and then checking in the evening. Those trail cameras and like you said, even with making a mock set with going back to the lure and bait, and just if you have a trail camera that has a video setting on it, just to see how the animal will approach the set and work that bait or that that lure that you're experimenting with is just, I mean, it's golden information.
Yeah, definitely. That'll probably be an investment of mine this summer. At least a couple of them.
No, I don't. The Jabs family. My trapping ability comes from my knowledge.
As far as bait and lures for skunks, it's being talked about right now in the comments. I trap my fair amount of skunks every year, and I skunks are not picky. They're you can catch them on sweet baits, uh, meat-based baits, just about anything. A, a skunk is definitely not a picky critter. If you've got them in your area, I mean, like I said, location's everything on them. But as far as bait choice, I've caught them everywhere from a sweet coon bait all the way up to my meat-based canine. Here's a question, about otters. I catch a lot of otters. I mean, not a lot. We're allowed 5 otters a year here. So my otters primarily on castor mountain sets for beaver. I've caught a few in the past in pocket sets that are baited with a fish bait that were meant for coons. But castor is a universal bait, and any otter swimming up and down a creek will more than likely come and check out a castor mound. With otters too, those are killer for otters.
Well, my 220 bucket set is my main otter producer, and I just bait it with fish.
Yeah, I mean that's what the otters are eating. That's their primary diet. So I mean, yeah, fish is definitely a good bait for.
Seth, cow fat will probably catch coyotes, but there's much better baits out there. Hey, did you guys happen to catch Pencil Tucky's video where he caught the possum in the trap?
The one that he let go?
No, the one he kept. To come close, quote what he said, he looked right at the camera and he says, "You know what? If this critter can keep smiling with his foot in a trap, I should be happy to have him." I thought that was a pretty good way to look at it, instead of getting mad about ruining his set,
I mean, as far as ruining a set, I mean, there's a lot to be said about catching critters on remakes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of eye appeal, a lot of scent there. I mean, everybody wants to get all pissed off and bent out of shape whenever they catch a undesirable critter, such as a skunk or a possum. But I mean, you reset that, there's a lot of critters come off of them remakes from sets like that.
Yeah, but when I can't say for myself, but you guys, you make a nice coyote set and you go and you got a possum, something worth $2,
Yeah.
if you're lucky.
Oh, I agree, but I mean, you're all setting doubles anyway, or you should be. You should have a second fresh set right there. So I don't look as catching a possum in a set is a big deal at all. I think in one of my videos I actually showed I caught 3 coyotes this year out of a remake, and I had a fresh set about 15 feet away that never caught. So I mean, for those of you who get all fired up, about catching possums or different things in your sets, if you stay with it'll prove itself over time.
I'm just glad we don't have them. I can live without them.
There's I'm sending up a male and a female express mail there for you, Timber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you say your name was? I forgot.
Yeah, I'm sure that would break a few border rules, eh?
Sometimes skunks spray in conibears and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I would say more often or not they don't, in my experience. And I catch quite a few in blind sets, blind conibear sets every year, and if they do spray, it's usually minimal. As long as they're caught, properly. And as always, guys, we've been doing this for several weeks now, and it seems to be a good thing. But frankly, I'm running out of topics. So we're doing this so everybody can watch and learn. So if there is a certain topic that you guys would like us to talk about, go ahead and share it with us. I mean, you guys have got to understand that we're not going to be able to talk for 2 hours on squirrel trapping. And I say that and I don't mean to offend anybody by that, but it keeps coming up. I mean, I try to do this as as along with just a good chat with everybody. But for those of you who'd like to see something, go ahead and post it, and we'd appreciate that.
Well, you know, Brian,
There's a question here, or go ahead, Timber.
Brian, me and Stuart talking about this many times. There's what you call the rough set and the natural set. You know what I mean? The natural set, you want everything looking natural, and the rough set, you want it roughed up. You know what I mean?
Me personally, in my area, if I use the rough set for coyotes, they will not come near it. You'll get an occasional pup, but they won't. They usually won't come near it. So I have to blend all mine. The rough set works really good for fox and coons, but the coyotes, because of the pressure, and I have so many people here trapping them, they will not come near it.
Yeah, and I use both. I mean, to say a dirt hole set, you know, me and Timber have talked about this, you know, a lot too. A dirt hole is a very general, you know, topic, or you know, type of set. Uh, it's just, I mean, the dirt hole, that means you just have a hole there. But how you blend that set in, you can go as far as making it all up, or you can blend it in, you know, and make it look just that natural. But you know, just try it out and see what works good. But I find that some areas dictate a blended in set, and some areas not so much. So, you know, I always stress setting doubles. One time I set a big tore up type of dirt hole set, and then 15 feet away I might make the exact same set, but I've just blended in real good. So, you know, it's really a personal preference, and what ends up being productive for you.
Yeah, Brian, try a couple of each and find out what works best for you. You see, I'm kind of lucky here because within 50 miles of me each way, there's nobody that dirt holes or makes flat sets. Nobody, but nobody does it.
Wow, lucky. It must be like ringing a dinner bell.
Yeah, and they don't know what they're missing.
Well, like the old days, don't spread the word. Now,
And you know, or go ahead, Steve.
have you seen or noticed at the roughed up dirt hole that coyotes seem to be a little bit more timid, or from the tracks and stuff, or does it look like they just boil right in or walk right in?
All depends. Every animal is different, and every animal will work a set different.
Yeah, I'm kind of along them same lines too. I think a lot depends on the. I catch a lot of critters in a step down dirt hole set, which is you know, I would consider that a roughed up set. There's no blending that set in. It sticks out like a sore thumb, and that critter goes in and he out of critters, you know, on basically flat sets, which are, you know, about the most blended in set that I can make. I think a lot depends on just the how that particular critter acts, but I also think that you know, if you go walk through the woods, you'll find a lot of areas that are dug up, and I mean they look like trench sets, like that under that. So roughing up a set, it's so unnatural to a coyote that they you know, that they won't work it. I think more than anything, it's having if they're at that set, now you've got them close enough that your bait's working, and that bait should be able to draw them down into that type of set. I mean, for the most part, your big trench sets, your big step down dirt hole sets, those are sets that a coyote is expecting to find food at that set. You know, you can catch near the critters you will in those type of sets if you just lure them. They need to feel that they go in there and they dig up that set. There's a prize down there waiting for them. You know, and I feel that's not so much the case with your, you know, your walk-through sets or your flat sets. There's nothing there that's, you know, there's a half a, you know, that somebody else buried down in there that I can dig up. So I think in those type of sets, your roughed up sets, I think your bait becomes a very important role in those sets.
I've noticed N8 said he had action at both types of dirt hole sets, but he hasn't made a catch yet. NH, are they coming into your sets, or are they just kind of walking by? Because it may be a problem with trap placement, is what I'm looking at, maybe.
Yeah, and while we're waiting on him to reply, Steve, before I forget, I just wanted to touch on this. Um, Trevor, I believe was his name, but he asked a question. He said you know, and we've got a lot of younger guys, you know, watching this. He said he'd saved up about $100 for trapping equipment, and he basically wanted to know, should he spend it on lures and bait or make his own. Well, bud, for $100 you can make more bait and lure than you'll ever use. And a lot we've talked all evening, I would definitely buy commercial bait and lure, especially if you're starting out. I would do my best to experiment with homemade baits, homemade lures, different things like that, and I would put my money towards traps. You know, that's, if you're getting into the trapping game, you need traps. That's, to set that steel down is one thing, and then you can slowly migrate in, you know, to having bait and lure. But in your instance, for a guy starting out, I would not recommend going out and spending a bunch of money on bait and lure. Lure will not make you a better trapper. You know, if you're starting out, you need to start from the basics.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
I myself would answer that a little bit differently. If he's new and starting out, I'd go like and buy 2 bottles of lure, but make sure you know what you're buying. Watch some videos and get some good stuff. And get 1 jar of bait, just 1 jar. Look at that bait and see what it's made out of. Smell that bait and try to simulate it with something else. And but don't go and spend a whole $100 in bait and lure.
Yeah, I agree. Spend any extra you have on traps. You could have 1 trap with 100 lures and not have a coyote in the area, or you could have 1 lure in 10 or 15 traps and spread out and get right in there, right in the good spot. Yeah, you don't have to go hog crazy on the lures. Just get 1 or 2 good ones, like Timber said, and test them out. If they don't work, sell them to your buddies. Get some different.
You see, guys, in Canada here where I trap, I gotta have skunk essence, and skunk essence is just as important as the truck that I drive to get me there. I gotta have it. I can't trap without it.
Is that because of the cold temperatures, Timber?
That's because of the cold temperatures.
But anyway, getting back to your question there, Steve, we kind of got going there. But as far as NH Trapper, he commented back and he said that the critters are stealing his bait and his lure, they're stepping on his trap. Well, depending on what set you're using, if that critter is stealing your bait, then you need to change up your set. That critter is not working that set near long enough to get caught. So if you're digging a dirt hole and he's stealing your bait, dig a deeper dirt hole. You know, and for those of you who's actually put trail cameras up and watched a critter work a set, you know, I think everybody thinks that the critters, they just walk right up to a set, and I'm talking foothold set. They just walk right up and they immediately get caught. That is not the case whatsoever. If you study animals, you'll understand that critter, he might circle that trap 3 or 4 times. He might come right into it. But the biggest thing trapping with footholds is you have to keep that critter at that set. The longer he's at that set, the more times he picks up his feet and he sets them down, the better the chance he is at putting his foot on that pan, which is, you know, right where you want him. Now, if he's not setting on his pan, he's working all around there. You can try a little bit of blocking. You know, I would definitely not go overboard with your fencing or your blocking, but that's something to consider also. But if he's stealing your bait, you know, you need to. It's your set. It's your set that you need to adjust. A critter should not be at your set long enough to steal your bait and then leave without getting caught.
Yeah, I see here he says he goes a minimum of 12 inches on his dirt hole.
Yeah, well, I wonder if he's not having mice or something going down, because, I mean, if a coyote's going down 12 inches to steal your bait, and not getting caught, you know, you're having, you know, froze up traps or other issues, you know, because that's what I do. I mean, I go a foot deep on my dirt holes, and, you know, I catch lots of coyotes every year without bait getting stolen. You know, I mean, that's the reason you go that deep. So perhaps maybe if you have a trail camera, set it up and observe, you know, what the animals are doing around your set.
Yeah, might get a surprise. I mentioned earlier to him it could be a gray fox sneaking in the back.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a lot of things. You know, is your backing not, you know, not substantial enough, you know, to make them work the set from the front? You know, many things, you know, come up in a case like this, and it's really hard to, you know, to tell somebody what to do or what not to do.
I remember making sets where I put like 5 or 6 traps in a circle and put my bait in the middle, hoping. A long time ago. Getting that frustrated, you know. It can be frustrating.
Yeah, I understand. And I will say, if you guys are in it for the, you know, if you're going for critters, I mean, numbers wise, do not get hung up on one critter. It is not worth it. Get out and move to a new area. You know, if you're in it for a numbers game, the numbers are going to come by pulling the cream of the crop off and moving along. They're not going to be made by sitting there on one critter. He's smart enough to outsmart you, then let him stay till next your breeders.
Yeah, if you're ever going to catch any animals in numbers, you got to keep setting more every day, and you got to keep moving, and you got to have the traps to do it with.
Always looking for the dumb ones.
Well, we'll take them ones too.
Yeah.
Actually,
It
the
wouldn't
real,
be for the dumb ones. There wouldn't be no.
yeah, or real aggressive. Sometimes they get real aggressive and just bolt right in there before his neighbor does. NH Trapper, it might be just bad luck. You can't fight that. He said he had coyotes in his set for 30 minutes working it.
Yeah, the question come up here. Do you think it's too big of a backing for canines? Most definitely, yes, there is. You know, and it all depends on location and situation. But you know, there is such a thing as too big a backing, and there's also such thing as not enough backing for coyotes. Coyotes in general do not like to be fenced in, but can do to keep them working a set, you know, in the front where your trap is, will only benefit you. You know, your backing doesn't have to be that big. It can be just simple, you know, a small stick, you know, three inches in diameter, and if your dirt hole is drilled at an angle where that coyote can see it, you know, he's got to work it from the front. So I would say more so than anything, fencing is the issue whenever it comes to canines, not so much as backing.
Excuse me.
Mm. There's the question for the universe. The guy's doing everything right, and the coyote's not getting in the trap. What's going on?
Yep.
Set a couple more traps. Yep, find out.
Yep.
That's what I would do.
Catch his buddy who's watching.
Don't get hung up on one critter. It's not worth it.
What the hell you doing, Steve?
Oh, am I freaking you out? Sorry. I was twiddling my thumbs.
Looks like you got a hot plate of french fries.
One of these days I'll get my camera mounted up higher. It's got a bit of a short cord on it. Okay, I'm going to say it, NH. Try lightening up your pan tension. Because he might be just pussyfooting around if he's real skittish.
Well, I think the biggest thing is if he's at 30 minutes, you don't have that set oriented in a good enough way that coyote will work that set. You know what I mean? There's a difference between a coyote working around a set and a coyote actually working a set. I mean, if you've got any kind of size trap there and he's truly working that set, he's gonna step on that pan.
Yeah, if he's getting your bait out of the
You know,
hole, your trap is not offset in the right place enough, or there's something not right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, if he's working that set enough to get your bait out of your hole, that trap placement is off. You know, because everything's working as it should. That coyote has come in, he's working the set, he's actually succeeded in taking the bait. The idea is to catch him before he gets that bait. But if he's there working that set enough to take the bait, I would say more than anything, it is trap placement, or have something has to do, you know, pan tension or something of the sorts.
He's got all the right answers. What about a couple of dirt clods to help direct his foot right over the pan? Small ones. Colby tart.
It's getting about that time, and like I said, I'll try to keep them, you know, right about 2 hours where everybody can still have a evening or whatnot. So with that being said, once again, like we always do, I'll give just a couple minutes for the last questions. Any of you guys have some serious input on stuff that we can do for future topics? You know, personal message me, you know, or things like that. Like I said, I am truly to a point where I'm almost running out of time on you guys for future topics. So we'll give just a couple minutes here for a few last questions, and then we'll sign off. So thanks again, everybody. I'm glad we keep having a decent turnout for this.
Yep, good night, everybody. Don't forget to come back again. It's you guys that keep us doing it.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hope to see you next week. See you, Colby tart.
All right, guys. Well, sounds good. We'll go ahead and sign off here. So say our goodbyes and see you guys next week.
Yeah. Good night, Barry. Good night, Brian.
See you, Luke.
Later, guys.
Peace out.